So we need to adopt our minutes of our inaugural board meeting on September the 3rd. So be resolved that the board adopt the September 3rd inaugural minutes. We have a mover and a seconder. Mover Diane, second Jarrett. Questions to it? Inaugural board meeting on September the 3rd. So be resolved that the board adopt the September 3rd inaugural minutes. We'll vote. We have a mover and a seconder. Mover Diane, second Jarrett. Questions to it? Inaugural board meeting on September the 3rd. So be resolved that the board adopt the September 3rd inaugural minutes. We'll vote. We have a mover and a seconder. 9-0. Mover Diane, second Jarrett. Now we have 5.2. Questions to it? Inaugural board meeting on September the 3rd. So be resolved that the board adopt the September 3rd inaugural September 3rd board meeting minutes. A mover and a seconder. Moved by Dawn, seconded by Art. Questions to that? If there's none, I'll call a question. It's carried. Carried 9-0. Thank you. 6.0 Superintendent's Report. Superintendent Timko.
Thank you. So you have my report in front of you, and I can speak to any issues or answer any questions that you might have. One of the things that we did bring in this year is we wanted to hear from our assistant superintendent, so I don't want to take a lot of your time. I'll put my stuff in writing, and I think our next item is you're going to hear from our assistant superintendent of student support services. So are there questions on my report?
Hearing none, let's move forward. Assistant Superintendent Julian, the floor is yours. Can you use your microphone, Jackie, please?
I also have it attached for you to look at. Basically just highlighting a few things that are going on in student services. We've just rolled out a student services manual. So this was just rolled out to our student services team and to administrators. The manual came out of, it was a recommendation from the 2016 review and reporting. That Sunrise School Division has a manual. So certainly a lot of work was done on this manual prior to me with former Assistant Superintendent Leslie Ebley and her team. But we were able to last year finalize it and get that rolled out. Review and reporting process. It's our year this year, so I'm just preparing to enter a review and reporting process with the department. So they'll meet with us, review our current practice, give us some good recommendations on improvement where and if needed. So I'm just waiting for more information from the department on that. Something that we're working on with our clinicians this year is, I guess, working on improving accountability around the implementation of recommendations. So some sort of feedback or loop process. Our clinicians will often give us, do assessments and give us some great recommendations. So looking at how we go back and see if we're using the recommendations, if they're having an impact, if we're not using them, why? Maybe they're not feasible. So then what are the conversations that need to happen? So that's a goal there with the clinical team. Student services team, I had mentioned before that this year we've incorporated monthly meetings with student services teams across the division so that we can get some consistency and support each other in our work, more importantly. Wanted to highlight that we are working divisionally on student and class profiles. So working on a template, a divisional template of classroom profiles that can then be used by student services teams that go in, program leaders, us, to know who are the students sitting in front of us. What do we need to know about these students? And just wanted to mention that our divisional resource teacher, Lorinda Bradley, who started just this year, currently has a focus on Whitemouth and Powerview. Lots of new resource staff in those schools, and also 2 schools that are looking at changing their student services model. So getting some support in there so we can look at what kind of model we want to use going forward for student services. And there are other pieces in there. If you have any questions, I will certainly do my best to answer them.
Any questions for, yeah, Don?
Is it possible to get a copy of the student service manual?
Yes, well, actually, I can tell you where to find it. So it's in Sunrise Docs in the Student Services tab. It's on. It's not working. Yeah. So we're just keeping the copy electronic because any changes we make, we'll do it to the electronic copy. So if do you know how to get to Sunrise Documents?
I know how to get to it, but in some documents I'm not allowed to, so.
You should be able to get into that one. We can check after the meeting. How come it's working so much better now? Well, we'll check after the meeting and I will make sure you can get in. I can also send you guys a link with the document. The only reason I'd like you to look at it electronically is because that's where all the updates are.
Anyone else? Questions for Art?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we talked about earlier in the past, Jackie, about the feasibility of relocating the clinician to other facilities. Like, what's the status on that?
I'm not sure I can answer what the status is on that. I think that one of the things that I am certainly looking at is clinicians, space in schools. I think in terms of the status, that involves a larger group of people to that discussion.
Well, I guess my question is there space in them for the schools? I guess maybe that's my question, or has that been researched?
We have started looking at that. I can't, there are definitely some schools with a lot of space and others where we haven't determined if we could actually carve out a room just for the clinician to use with the phone and the confidentiality piece. So I don't have that answer today.
Well, I'm just thinking to myself, we talked about the board, and I think we as a board are incumbent, we have to get our staff out of that green shirt. That's embarrassing to have people working in a facility like that. That's just my honest opinion. And if we have space in other facilities, we should utilize them.
Okay.
So Jackie, I think that I hear something coming from Trustee Barry is a timeline to come back to our board with where we are with clinicians. And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think that we're probably looking at some kind of timeline. So can you work with Superintendent Timko to come back to a timeline with some information back to us?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Trustee Harris?
My apologies for being a little slow on the ball. I have a question for the superintendent's report. I can go back to that. I'll get a next meeting then.
You can go back to that, but I want to stay with anything
Yes,
else for Jackie, and
finish
then I'll
up
let
with
you
her
come back to it. So I have a question for you, Jackie, and it's with regard to, in the future, when you're going to come back to us, I believe that you're setting goals with your individual teams of people, and then you're talking about goals, and I'm sure that you're talking about SMART goals. Can you, A, is that going on, and B, could you come back to us with sharing that, where those SMART goals are? Because at the end of the day, we're always looking at what are you doing, is it working? And so we're looking at the end of the day as well as for you telling us what you're working on, and at the end of the day, is it working?
Yes, yep.
So my question would be, so the next time that you come back to us with a report, can you come back and give us that stuff? Can you give us that? Will you be able to provide that to us?
So provide you with the goals that we have set in student services
Yeah.
for the year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Part of them are here, part
Yep.
of this is part of our
Yeah,
goals.
absolutely. Thank you. Jared?
Thank you, Chairman. I have a two-part question. The first part is the review and reporting process. So you said it's our year. So we only do this every...
Every 4 years is what the current model is. So every 4 years. So in 2016, they were here. The department was here, and they go through a review and reporting process of student services. So 2019.
Okay, so now I still
wait.
have a two-part question.
Yeah.
So the department, we're talking about the Department of Education or what?
Yes,
Okay.
the inclusion support branch.
Okay. And then my last piece is just when does that process end, and when would that information be coming back to the board?
So the reality is I have emailed, sorry, I'm not looking at you. The reality is I have emailed the department to ask them about timelines. They don't have them yet. So I know it's our year. I don't know when they will come, but the process, from what I'm understanding, I haven't gone through it before, is they will let me know when they're coming, what schools they're visiting. They will look at specific students who have student-specific plans. I don't know it ahead of time, and neither do the schools. So we're all kind of in a bit of an ants as to which schools we'll be going to. They visit schools, they review student plans, they actually observe students, they meet with myself and some of the departments I work with or the people I work with and give us recommendations. So I don't have a lot of information because they don't yet.
Thanks, Jackie. Anyone else?
Just a question about, where did I see that? A divisional template for student services teams. Can you explain that a little bit more? Give us some more information on that one.
The student and class profile is not just a student services, part of a student services profile. It's something divisionally that we're working on, where we have a classroom profile. Currently all our schools use class profiles, so they can then make a school profile and have an understanding of who their learners are. So what the needs are, what the resources are that we need. Currently everybody is using a different template. In my visits last year, and I think also in some of Leanne's conversations, the school teams that I worked with identified that it would be nice to have a divisional class profile template. So using the work of Faye Brownlee and the research behind that, we have come up with a divisional class template, profiling template that we've currently given to administrators and student services to try, to give us feedback on, to modify if they need to, so that we could come up with a divisional class profile. That way, if School A and School B want to talk, we're talking about the same profile. So it really frames the conversation and would hopefully get us to a point where we can support each other within our schools and school to school and have just more of that collaborative ability to work together using a common template. The class profile template essentially looks at what are the strengths in the classroom, what are some of the challenges, might look specifically at some of the needs in terms of health concerns. I don't have it in front of me, Leanne, if you want to jump in with some pieces, we'll look at literacy and numeracy levels so that a teacher can then inform her instruction, and also that student services people know what might be the needs or the supports needed in that classroom. Did I answer your question?
Jackie, it's a real good tool, I think, and going back to Diane, certainly as a set of grade 3 students go to grade 4, it's helping the grade 4 teachers get a pretty good blueprint of how the strengths and weaknesses of the children, and they continue to move on. It's a living document that changes because as the children change, but it's a real good piece I think you used the word, it's helping teachers inform their practices of how they're going to go ahead and teach this child, because they're learning from everyone else about what makes these kids tick, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. Go ahead.
Sometimes what happens at the beginning of the year, we hear about an influx of students that may have greater need than the regular classrooms. And so sometimes we hear at the board table that we have to rush to address that need at a school. Have we had that this year, where we've had an influx of either students of another language or behavioral or some sort of issues that have come to you as a student services person?
Certainly we have some schools that have new students that are coming with some higher needs that we didn't know about when we were doing our planning in June. Right now, I have been in communication with those schools. We are working with the resources we have in our schools. Student services teams are getting together to look at how we can plan and educate and go forward. So it hasn't been huge. I haven't heard of any EAL or an influx of EAL students, but every year there are new students that come into our schools. So, yeah.
Thanks very much, Jackie. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? So, Trustee Harris, can I go back to you for the question to Superintendent?
So next week, October 4th, we have an exciting PD plan for the entire staff of Sunrise School Division. Whatever October 4th is. You have 2 weeks to plan this. What has the response been for the online survey for everyone to pick their courses and seminars?
That's an awesome question, because that's one of our pieces of feedback, and I can kind of a bit of a proud mama moment we had on our first day. So the survey opened on this past Monday, and we had 367 of our 850-ish register on the first day. By the end of day 2, we were near the 600 mark in terms of people registering. So we are near complete. We are meeting as a team tomorrow to address sort of that little handful of folks who have not yet registered, or making sure that our sessions are balanced. So we're pretty pleased with the uptake on people registering.
Some of our staff is only half-time. Are they only expected to attend half the day? Like just the lunch hour?
So a lot of what happens with our half-time or our part-timer employees is they have to sometimes make tough choices about, do you want to stay for the whole day? Some of our half-time employees work odd days or even days, and some of them luck out that they're on an odd day or an even day, and the other ones are like, oh shoot, that's not my day. Oftentimes we will work with our administrators, and if they have someone who really wants to attend a PD opportunity, can those administrators find a time that they can, switch the schedule so that it's a benefit for everybody, and also we're not taking time away from kids. We try to accommodate as much as we can.
Anyone else? Thanks, Kath. Let's move on. So Secretary Treasurer Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My report is filed. A couple of things I'll highlight. There was some question last meeting about a summary of the meeting we had with Maxim regarding the troubles we're having with some of the bus engines. So there's some information there, and I'm happy to take questions. The piece I guess I need some feedback from the board on is with regard to finance. I've had some conversations with BDO about completing the audit and presenting to the board. So generally what happens is around the middle of October, they will come have a special meeting prior to our in-camera meeting to present to the board the results of our audit. This year is a little bit strange in the sense that we have meetings on the 1st and the 15th of October, and that's it. And unfortunately, Lauren is booked elsewhere for another school division, as a matter of fact, at 7 o'clock. So she's floated a couple options. She's happy if we would like to have a special meeting for her to present, or she is happy to come here at 4:30 on the 15th, present to the board. She will not be available to present to public. She would send one of her colleagues to present to the public, so I'm not sure if that's a concern for the board or not.
Comments from anyone? So the idea is she can come at 4:30 and someone else will present to the public later on? Okay. Or we choose another date and have a special meeting.
Generally, the way it's kind of floated is she'll come at 4:30, she does a special meeting with the board. We direct her back to the Sunrise Room where she has a bite to eat and sits out our regular in-camera meeting, and then she's back in the room at 7 o'clock to present to public. So everything would flow as per normal, except she would not be here at 7 o'clock to present to public.
So the question is for us to have it on the 15th at 4:30. And can people be here for 4:30?
And sorry, just to clarify, the urgency is that the audit has to be completed into the province by the 31st, and the 15th is our last meeting in October.
Okay, so I guess I'm not giving you a whole lot of options here. So we can have it on the 15th or a special meeting after the 15th.
But before the 31st, obviously, yeah.
Yep. So round table, what say you? Art? Oh,
Are you saying that if she was to come to that meeting at 4:30, another colleague would stay and do the public part of that? And if we were to have not that day, we would not have a opportunity for public to have a presentation?
No, what we would have to do, and then this is sort of why I would like to decide this today, we would do a public meeting. We have to present the audit to the public. So we would have to post that on the website and make the public aware of the fact that we are calling a special public meeting.
so Art, right now your thing is 4:30. Yep. Jared? 4:30 on the 15th? Russ? Okay.
That could work.
4:30? Karen? Okay, Don? Diane? All right, so it looks like we've got the heads nod that 9 of us will go with 4:30 on the 15th, and then we'll have a colleague present that night to the public.
Right.
Okay?
Okay,
Thank
and then
you.
I'm happy to take any other questions on my report.
Sorry. Scott, have all the new buses been commissioned and are on the road?
You know what, I haven't had an opportunity to talk to Danielle this week, but she did email me excitedly last week. The step is that they get completed, they get delivered to International, and then the Pupil Transportation Unit, PTU of Manitoba Education has to inspect them before we can receive them, and that was happening last week, so I would anticipate that we'll get them this week.
You said you haven't purchased the software for $5,000 for the to monitor the engines. Are you intending to do that, or you just going to do without the software?
Our shop foreman, Brian, is recommending that he doesn't believe that would be helpful in our case. The point would try to be a little proactive about sensing engine failures before they happen, but he's not optimistic that that would be the case, so I don't believe we're going to proceed with that.
Jared?
So this month I've had the opportunity as finance chair to do some check signing, and my belief is there was software purchased on an invoice. Can you speak to that? Is that different software?
I don't recall. I'd have to double check on what that is. We have a number of different software packages in the division, from student tracking software to our accounting software to a whole bunch of different things.
So can you just make note of that and then just come back to us with that next time?
Certainly
No
can.
big deal.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're good off of his report, and we'll go to an information, for a BDO report for information. Scott?
Yeah, I believe this is something that Trustee Doohan had mentioned last time, that needs to come to the board on an annual basis. This is information that BDO is obligated to provide to the board before they start the audit process. I'm not sure there's much use in going through it all, but I'm happy to take any questions on it. Basically lays out what their processes are, their timelines, what the cost is going to be, what their obligations are as auditors, what their limitation of liability is, things like that.
Thanks, Scott. Art?
BDO has been our auditor. We go to the market about every 6 years. This is the second last year in this current contract. So this year, and then when they complete next year's audit, we'll go back to the market again. And basically, when you look for an auditor, trustee, we don't go to the market every year, but every once in a while you do, certainly, to make sure you're getting the best bang for your buck.
And we talked earlier, do they do quite a few other school divisions?
They do quite a few others, and the one I'm referring to is Interlake School Division. So I was going to arm wrestle Mr. Lehman and see if we could get Lauren here for the public meeting, but didn't quite work out.
Jerry?
Sorry, Scott, I have another question. So going back to under your maintenance, you said the work is wrapping up on phase 1 of the ESS HVAC replacement. Again, going back to signing off on payments for that, we made a payment when I signed for it, or before I signed for it, I asked if the work was complete, and I was told yes.
I don't believe it's complete until October 30th. We do percentage of completion payments to the contractor, Red Lake Construction.
So
Diane, did you have a question?
I guess I just wanted to make sure people that the board was looking at referring to the Appendix C, the independence letter that's directly sent to the Board of Trustees. We get that letter from the auditor, and basically they're giving you definitely the information inside there, but one of the items with the auditor is that the board can, if they want to, ask to have greater oversight over anything within the budget of the All of Sunrise. So if we decided that we wanted to ask the auditor to look at something specific, ask what the cost would be for that, but we have the right to ask for that. So often when you get the letter from the auditor, she'll say, this is what my plan is. Did you want me to have a look at anything specific? Because the audit is fairly general. She doesn't dig into anything special unless you ask for it. So I'm throwing that out there for board information. So if there's something that you wanted to look at more deeply, you could always ask the auditor to do that, but you also have to know what the cost would be if you do it. So that's why I wanted to make sure we have the letter and we have at least have that. So that might come out of a meeting with her. Sometimes this letter might be a generation of having a meeting with her before she proceeds more, or you just wait till October the 15th. It's up to you guys.
So, Diane, thanks for pointing that out. So is the question then, the report, let me come back to it. This would be then, as they're giving us the report, so we would have to let them know sometime now. My understanding is that if we want them to do anything specific, right? Okay. And so I guess if that's news to many trustees, it's news to me. Thank you. Is there anything that we around table that's something that we would be wanting to go ahead and look into? Is there anything that from Diane that does anybody know that there's something that we want specifically done? Art?
Not specifically thinking of that. I just was like clarification. What is the cost of the audit? What is the fee?
It's in here. I think 31,700.
Yeah, thanks, Trustee Nicol. I believe it's 32.7, very close. Their quote is, just so you know, on the bid that they submitted was higher than that. It's 34,700 is what they quoted. Now they're actually telling us they believe it's going to cost 32.7. Last year's audit was election, which is October 21st. So we can decide today. I'm just telling you, it's not as big of a priority as I thought it might be.
So what are our options? Bus or?
LED lighting and the busing were the two things that we submitted.
Does anybody have any preferences on LED lighting or busing? Yeah?
Could we just postpone the discussion until after the election?
Yeah, it's not pressing anymore now that it's postponed until after the election, for sure.
Okay. Just to remember, I'm gonna go back to Colleen. Colleen says is that if we don't need, Colleen was someone that came in and helped our board. And I remind ourselves about pushing things off. And Karen reminded us earlier today that instead of, and yes, we can do that certainly, Jared, but the whole idea is that if things are in front of us, as opposed to try to avoid pushing things off our plate to go ahead and make decisions. So we certainly can, but just to remind ourselves, I think a number of people are going to be reminding me, hey, remember that's what Colleen said, and we all kind of agreed, and that's kind of where we got these things from. So trying to be as practical as possible, but no, fair enough.
Sorry, no, I can understand that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just referring, I guess, my concern is that if a different government gets elected, those funds may not be available. So why have the discussion until we know that the money's coming?
Works? Okay. Thank you. Let's move on. Board business. Okay, so we can go through a number of these things pretty quickly. 8.0, we've got the SCA hockey tournament. So be it resolved, the board approve in principle the Springfield Collegiate Institute hockey team tournament to Anaheim, California, November 26th, December the 1st. I need a mover and a second. Moving by Dan Duma, seconded by Jarrett. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Any questions? We need to vote. Oh, sorry. Trustee Reed?
Oh.
I'm just wondering if we shouldn't have some board oversight on this. I would volunteer to go along with them.
I'm sure that there's some PD opportunity along the lines down there in at the SCI hockey tournament, Trustee Reed. Good with moving forward? Okay. I need a mover and a seconder. Mover, trustee Reed, seconder, trustee Berry. Call the question. It's carried 9-0. 8.5 is the RFP 11-19 wireless network. Be it resolved that the request for the wireless network be awarded to Bell MTS with a lease option for 60 months for a total of $101,622.31 over a 5-year period. To get it on the table, I need a mover and a seconder. Don moved it, seconded by trustee Barry. Questions? Trustee Barry?
So is this the wireless network for all our facilities, all the schools, or?
We replace all the wireless network on our buildings in a rotation, kind of similar to how we do hardware. So this is actually for the Oak Bank cluster, Dugald and Enola. So every 5 years, we kind of rotate around to different areas.
Any other questions?
It's not a question, it's just a comment about the RFP that's provided to the board. It would help me to know that the recommendation is supported by all the people, and I wonder if they put their signatures to this RFP when it comes to the board, saying that they agree with the RFP and that they all agree with the recommendation with signatures attached to the RFP that comes to the board.
I think it's not a question about the RFP, but it's about the process. So it's being submitted by Tracy, but I think what you're saying is that could you have Gord's, we want Gord's, our IT manager's signature on it, knowing that he's supported that, and that then obviously that Scott's supported it through finance. That's kind of what you're looking for?
Yeah, I'm just looking for the signatures, and then
Yeah.
it makes it a more formal document,
Yeah.
and I know that everybody's in agreement that this is the way to go.
Scott, we can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll call a question. We've had a discussion around mileage rate. So we have information here in front of us. And Scott, you've made a recommendation, so
Yeah, this came up during the whole discussion on indemnity, and there's been a bit of confusion. In 2018, we tied our divisional mileage rate into the provincial rate. It is not a flat rate. It is 41 cents a kilometer, but there is an adjustment up or down of minus or plus 1 penny for every 10 cents that gas goes over or under $1. So it's kind of been a challenge for our administration to understand what the mileage rate is at any given point in time. In fact, I talked to Cole about this. His membership is obviously our largest employee group. We didn't want to do it on a daily basis. There's no mention in the provincial policy about how often they do it. Is it daily? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it yearly? So what we said is we'll take a look at the average price of fuel every month, and we will adjust our mileage rate up or down depending on the average price of fuel as published in Manitoba by Stats Canada. So the challenge is now we have 850 plus employees, many of whom are submitting expense claim forms, using the wrong mileage rate. Andrea's spending a lot of time correcting them or sending them back. My preference would be to use a flat mileage rate as opposed to a fluctuating one. And just to kind of close that out, sorry, Trustee Barry, before we go to question, just some stats for you. We generally travel as a division about 460,000 kilometers a year. So our budget this year is about 214,000 for mileage. Last year we had 230,000 in the budget, and we actually used about 198. So if we used about the same ratio of kilometers as we did last year, we have about $16,000 in wiggle room in the budget.
Barry, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I agree with Scott. This is a confusing method that we're using right now. It doesn't make any sense to me. And I agree we should have a flat rate. And it was brought to my attention by a few staff members. And also, it was actually even more confusing as the past few months, gas went up and the rate went down. To me, it didn't make any sense whatsoever. So I think we should just forget about that whole comparing it to provincial average, compare it to other school divisions. I think I'll put a motion on the floor today for discussion. I think 45 cents a kilometer is reasonable compared to other school divisions, and that's all we should just compare to it. And if we want to revisit it, say in 6 months, revisit in 6 months. And end of story. It's just confusing. It costs too much time and effort for all the staff. So I'll put that motion forward if you allow me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so someone can help me here. We did say that we were going to have a discussion about it, so do we want to have the motion on the floor first and then the discussion? Or do we want to discuss first and then the motion?
Okay, I'm willing, whatever.
Because we already have it on, how am I doing? Can we first of all just have a quick discussion and then we'll come back to the art?
Fair enough. Yep.
Okay. How about if we go around table and people want to share? Jared?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with a flat rate. What that rate is, I'm not sure yet.
Trustee Reed?
I agree with the flat rate as well. 45 makes sense to me, but
Diane?
I agree with Trustee Barry's recommendation and semi-annually review. And I like the rate. I think we should proceed with that.
Karen?
I agree with Diane and Russ, 45 and flat rate.
Don?
I like the flat rate review every 6 months, but I think we should stick with what the provincial employees are getting, 41.
Robin?
I would go by the recommendation that Scott has given us in his memo, saying my recommendation is that we set the mileage rate for the division at a flat rate of 44 cents per kilometer, and we review every 6 months. We go what has already been presented to us.
Diane?
I agree with the review every 6 months, but I would stick with the 41 cents.
Okay, my comment would be I agree too, Art, with the fact about a flat rate. I'm having some difficulty about the 45 cents rate. I too think of having a rate comparable to what the provincial government is, but that's for everybody to go ahead and decide tonight. So I think that we've probably had that conversation. It looks like we're having a flat rate. The issue is we need to come up with a rate that we can go ahead and live with. I've heard 45s, I've heard 44s, and I've heard 41s. So Art, we did say that we would come back to you. You were the one that put it out there, and if you wanted to go ahead and make a motion, Art, that's your call to it. I think you've heard what people are around. At the end of the day, I think that we would need to get a flat rate, and just clarify before I get you to do the motion, Robert's rules mean if all of a sudden we try to get $1, I'm not saying we're going to get $1, it gets turned down, can we then say, no, we don't want $1, now we want 50 cents, now we want 25 cents? Can we continue to work that until we're there? Okay. I just wanted to make sure as to where we were. Robert's rules is I'm learning. So Art, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I so move that the divisional rate be changed to 45 cents per kilometer to review the said rate after a period of 6 months.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? I need a seconder to the motion. A seconder by trustee Reed. Okay. Yep. So, quick. Yep. So, okay. So part of it is now I'll give you people to, I think we've talked about it. I'll give you a quick, I'll go around the room very quickly again to see it. We're at 45, right? Okay. Don? No, I think,
I want to make an amendment to that.
okay.
Okay, I want to make an amendment, the fact that, to make it a little bit more clear, he says, like, motion says after 6 months. I'm saying in October and April. So we have 6 months, we don't know whether it's 6 months from where. So,
So the amendment's good is about October and April, and now we're at 45 cents. Yep, Diane?
I would additionally like to amend it to 44 cents, which was the recommendation from our Secretary Treasurer. So I would be wanting to go forward with our Treasurer's recommendation of 44 cents.
You agree with that recommendation, Art? Do you agree with the recommendation? Okay, so we've got 44 cents. Okay, so we've got the recommendation that the amendment that Don suggested, April and November, and we're at 44 cents. Any other comment to that question? Any other comments? Did I lie? What did I say? Okay, April, October. I knew, just wanted to see if everybody was listening over there. Thanks. Okay, 44 cents, April and October. Any comments to it? Jared?
So I'm not going to make an amendment. I hadn't made up my mind, but I do agree with Trustee Nicol and Trustee Duma that I think 41 cents is fair. So, but whatever the board decides, I'm fine with, obviously.
So I think that we said is that we're going to continue, that if we still need a mileage rate, so we're going to, I think right now that it's on the floor at 44 cents. Trustees, then we're going to have to do this by showing of hands because we can't do it electronically. And so we'll see if 44 sticks, and if 44 sticks, then we're good to go. Any other comments to it? Okay, so I'll call the motion. So that the motion reads, Stacy, that we have a mileage rate
Be it resolved that the board approve the divisional mileage rate of 44 cents per kilometer reviewed April and October.
Thank you. So I'll call the you were going to lead the discussion on Manitoba 150, the divisional float.
all right, this is just a kind of discussion. I don't want to, I'm not intending to get a vote tonight. You know that Manitoba is 150 years old next year, at May the 12th. And I think that the division as a whole should be doing something to celebrate that. Some of the ideas I've had is having a divisional float. By the way, that motion was put forward about 6 years ago, and nothing has happened since then. So if we follow the resolutions that was put forward 6 years ago, we should be having one. I couldn't find exactly the date when it was, so I'll be still looking to see the date. But I thought divisional float was a very good idea. The other thing is that if we have money in the budget, and probably that we might have, is that we give some money to each of the schools to celebrate Manitoba 150 on May the 12th. It doesn't have to be May the 12th, but that's when it was signed. So even if they do it somewhere in May and June. So I more or less want a discussion, because to get some ideas, and then probably by our next meeting I'll have a motion put forward.
Okay, thanks, Don. I did think that we did say that we would give people an opportunity around table if they wanted to go ahead and share in comments, and that was for information. Anything to add? Diane, did you want to add anything to that? Trustee Harris, did you want to add anything? Karen? Diane?
I would think it, if possible, to provide a little extra funding for the schools to enhance their Canada 150 acknowledgement. That would be, I'd be in favor of that if there is money to be distributed.
Russ?
I'm just curious what the float would be doing. Is it going to go around to parades and, or?
Don, you want to answer that?
Idea is that it would be going around to the parades. Like usually if this local trustee wants to go into a parade, like for instance in Whitemouth there's always parade August 1st, and I always put a float in behalf of the, well I guess I'm by myself, part of the school division. But it'd be nice if it was a school division float rather than a Don Nickel float, especially since it's 150th anniversary for Manitoba.
I would love to see you in that Lac Tabani float, Russ, on July 1st weekend. It would be awesome. Kidding aside.
I guess that's not something we have to decide now anyway, but it's just I'm thinking there could be 3 or 4 towns with July 1st and they all want the float. Other than that, I have no.
I think part of it is Don's just sharing for information, and 2 parts to it, a float, and then has also opened up the eyes of is there should be money set aside to schools to help celebrate Manitoba 150. Comment?
No, I'm in agreement as long as we're fiscally responsible with the amount of money that we're putting forward to that.
Trustee Barry?
I'm just, so you just want this just for the 150? And my question would be, like, who would be, where would this float be? Who would be making it? And are you gonna have stuff like our parades here has candy for the kids? Are you gonna have money for candy, and who's gonna haul it around? Who's gonna drive it around? Like these kind of unknown things, but just for food for.
All right, those details would be in the in the motion, okay, and I will try to have all those details in there.
I guess I selfishly would just like to have some of those details around, again, the staff doing that work, who's putting a float together, because my time I would rather spend in schools doing educational work than constructing floats and riding around in parades. I can't see that that's a good use of our time. So I just want some clarity around whether, like, who's doing the hard work or the heavy lifting around that.
Again, that will be part of the motion.
I can see the Don Nickel 150 float coming here. All right, Don, thanks for putting that comment together, and we'll look for more information about it. Thank you. We're on 8.8, Policy Committee meeting minutes of September the 12th. Policy, Karen, Policy Chair, do you want to move forward with this, or?
We had our, is that the wrong one? Oh, it's not working. Oh. Kathy submitted our agenda, and we were reviewing policies 1, 2, 3. Those were the 3 priorities, weren't they? Kathy, just like, if you could just confirm the need to research origin, what was our decision on that one? And then I'll go on to policy 2.
So we talked about in policy 1, it was our mission and vision and values, and we talked about the level and scope to which we would have to do if we were going to revisit those, and we wanted to get some more background information on where they came from, when they were developed, how long ago that was, and all of that research information before it is we began tampering with them.
Thank you, Kathy. You needed to jog my memory on that one. Policy number 2, we've put forward to revise the narrative. I actually gave the board And the committee some homework and went through multiple other school division policies, and we referenced them. And I brought some to the attention of the committee, and this was one that stood out, and all four others agreed that we liked the wording. This was actually from Brandon's policy number 2. So as it reads there, this is what we liked. The rest of policy 2 in Brandon, ours is actually duplicated, or should I say that some of the policies are duplicated in other school divisions. So the wording is exactly the same, but this was just brought forward. The four of us liked the wording as an introduction, so we wanted to bring it to the board. Obviously, your opinions on it.
So Karen, I think that what I see in front of us is that you have a notice of motion, or a motion stating, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees commits to governance leadership that is ethical, respectful of others, student and community focused, considerate of staff, open to the input, ideas, and constructive criticism of others, and it's focused on the continuous development, improvement, and growth of all in Sunrise School Division. So that's what we're looking for an action. We're moving that forward, Karen?
Yeah, we wanted to introduce that as an introductory paragraph to policy number 2. We like the wording, it sounded strong, and it was one that we reviewed and read. And I said that if we go and approve this, that we tell Brandon we came up with it first.
Okay, so you're going to move that then, Karen?
Yep.
So it's moved by Karen, seconder?
I think we're just providing a notice of motion, as we have to do according to Robert's rules, and then the next meeting we would be making a motion.
Awesome. Thank you. So that's okay. So part of it is you're providing a notice of motion. Thank you very much for letting us know. So we're aware of that, and it'll come up the next time that we come together. So again, going back to Colleen, if anybody has any questions, the idea should then go back to email out to all of trustees and to Kathy and to Scott, certainly about anything with regard to this motion that's on the table. Thank you. I think we have another notice of motion that you want to go ahead and 8.10. Karen? The amendments? I can read it out for you. Go ahead.
But yeah, please do if you won't mind.
Okay, so the policy committee will bring a notice of motion to the September 17th meeting. 15.3 be amended to read, keeping the public informed of the board's and division's challenges, deliberations, policies, and actions by encouraging the public and the media to attend meetings either in person or through electronic means, with the exceptions of in-camera meetings. All supporting documentation of regular board meetings will be provided to the public no later than the start time of each regular board meeting. So we did ask the policy committee to come forward with that information. So you're providing, I guess, a notice of motion that you are going ahead and doing that, and that we will, you'll bring the policy committee, will bring that forward at our next meeting. Because we did ask you to go ahead and do that. Thanks,
Yep,
Karen,
correct.
for doing that. Comments or questions on that? Okay, thank you. We do then have, there is a highlighter. If you go back to 8.8, there is a highlighter on the last attachment. If you're looking for anything, procedure highlighter, September the 17th, for all of the things. Kath, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we talked about bringing procedures here either that were new or that were amended as information. So because we had done some work over the summer, there's a lot more of them here because they're new or amended just because this is some of our summer work. So that last document on 8.8 is just a procedure highlighter. It's things like this is just a new procedure that we shared with principals. The organizational chart is an example. We changed titles because they were incorrect in our org chart. So we'll give you just kind of the Coles Notes version of what that is. I did have a question by, not email here before the meeting around the long service one. We have never had a long service procedure, so we sat down over the summer and wrote up what it is that we've been doing so that we have a procedure for our long service and retirement. So we said we would bring all those new ones as information.
So Kath, what we've asked for is that the highlighter then is that if you've changed anything, it's giving us then what the change is. So my understanding is that there's information here on expense reimbursements, organizational chart, online receiving through PowerSchool, purchase ordering, receiving menu, and long service retirement. Are there any questions on any of those? And again, I'll stop. Any questions on any of those? Karen?
I just wanted to bring it to the attention that although we were going to be, it's not a question on that, but we were reviewing policies 1, 2 and 3, but we had to defer policy 3 to the next meeting just because we didn't get time to go through everything.
So I think that in accordance with the education that we were doing with Colleen, when you didn't have an understanding of something, you sent an email to all trustees and then to Karen and Kathy with regard to what was going on. So when I was reading online receiving through Power School and purchase order receiving from Power School, I didn't understand. I didn't understand it. So I sent an email out to all of you, and I sent it to Scott, and I said I don't quite understand. So Scott, can you give me a little update as to, is this because we're improving our ordering system or purchase ordering through, anyways, I didn't quite understand.
Yeah, essentially the impetus for online receiving is traditionally the way it's worked. Schools are authorized to order up to a certain amount of supplies, curriculum supplies, school supplies. They place the purchase order. The goods would come in, presumably they get a packing slip. The invoice comes to the head office. All the paperwork gets shipped out to the school, and they review everything, and the principal would sign off saying, yes, we got this. What we're asking them to do now is to enter their receiving of the goods into our Power School system. None of the paperwork from the head office has to be shipped out to the school to be signed off. As long as the purchase order matches the receiving and matches the invoice, then we go ahead and pay it. It doesn't need to be signed off again by the principal. So this is about streamlining processes in accounts payable.
So one more question. I'm going to give an example of something that I did this week. This week I wanted to order 30 books because I'm doing a book study with my staff. I couldn't get the books on. I couldn't get the books on the Manitoba Textbook Bureau. I found them on Amazon. So do you know what? I went on to Amazon and I ordered first time ever on Amazon. I just wanted to let you know I felt pretty proud of that. And so I ordered on Amazon, and you know what? I'm getting the books on Thursday. So I paid for it with a credit card. I ordered it on Amazon, and I'm good to go. Can we do things like that?
We can. We ask that they still submit a purchase order, and we review it as per normal. There are times where there are materials that are not available, as you mentioned, through the Manitoba Textbook Bureau that will go to alternative sites. We generally ask that they use the division credit card. We have 3, myself and Kathy have one, as well as Tracy, our purchasing manager. So we ask them to work with Shannon and Tracy in purchasing generally to place that order on their behalf rather than do it on their own personal credit card. But that's with a slight tweak, yes, we do the same sort of thing.
Okay, so my question would be then, again, I'm doing it on my own credit card. I'm getting it done. I should have probably ordered the books earlier. I didn't order the books earlier, but I'm getting the books in 4 days from when I needed them. Are we able to go ahead and get that turnaround time? Because I'm going to just keep going, is that the school division I work for, they trust me with $100,000 in a school budget. And I don't know if they trust me with $100,000. And part of it is, you know what, obviously if I'm not doing something right, then you know what, they're going to put more layers of bureaucracy on me so that I can't go ahead and do those things. But I have the flexibility, and you're giving me the trust to go ahead and spend it because I didn't plan properly, but I'm still going to get them right away. What I'm sensing is we can't do that here.
With some slight differences, and it can get a little time consuming because we ask them to go through central office. We have looked at some options that I haven't yet presented to the board. One of the things that has been presented to us is potentially purchase cards. Scotiabank would be willing to give us a considerable line of credit, let's say $50,000. We could provide a card to each of our administrators, and online we could adjust the limit on that card up or down if they want to make purchases. That way they're not having to call the central office and make a purchase on a credit card. So there are options that we're looking at. Right now, short answer, Paul, is we can do the same thing ordering from Amazon. We ask they do it through the central office, and it can be a little more time consuming than just doing it on your own, for sure.
Okay, thank you. Don?
I just know, I think last May or something like that, maybe April, I wanted to order a book. So I just phoned Stacy and she did everything I had within 3 days.
Just would like to put this on the minutes. Please don't have all our administrators call Stacy.
Thank you. So we've got, we've taken care of the information on 8.16, all that information. We're going to move on. Professional development. Thank you for being patient with us, Leanne and Cole. I think that, do you want to introduce or do you want to ask?
I can.
Yep.
So part of what we've done is we welcomed Cole and, yeah, you are on next. We've welcomed Cole and Leanne as part of our Sunrise Teachers Association. And they have, through our collective agreement, a professional development fund called Contractual PD. And they look after administering that fund, and they have an obligation and a want to come and tell you all about it every year and how they've spent it and what all the good things they've done. Yes?
Yes. Thank you for the invitation. And I pushed the button. Maybe I'll push it again. Maybe I have to push it hard. There. All right. Okay, so yes, thanks again for the invitation. Kathy conveyed the invitation. The board was interested in finding out, I guess, about the Contractual Professional Development Fund, and we're here to talk or to speak to the fund, the rationale for professional development. We're going to give you an overview of the contractual PD program, keeping in mind that some of you are relatively new, and so I'll explain a little bit about the development of that program, the funding, the criteria, and steps we've taken to provide oversight, a little bit about the PD committee and the responsibilities, and the PD categories, funding amounts, and applications, and examples of PDs, how the board or the division money is being spent. And I understand that the division wanted to see, or the board wanted to see some, learn about some trends. And we don't have statistical information on trends. It's just like the anecdotal, exactly. Thank you. Leanne? Oh, and 2018-19 financials. Right. Oh, and last, challenges. Okay, so rationale for professional development. And by the way, I was going to make paper copies, but I thought rather than making paper copies, I could provide the superintendent with a flash drive and for distribution, if you're interested. So some rationale for professional development, and this is in no particular order, but, and I think Leanne, jump in anytime you want.
So just reading off of here, we know as teachers, principals, clinicians, everybody, we need to be continuing our professional development on a regular basis. So we need to be more effective in addressing the diversity that's going through our classrooms and our students. We need to support students' individual needs, professional learning objectives, fulfill professional learning plan, our school goals, our divisional goals. We're learning new techniques, processes, or materials. Things change. We're developing and enhancing our qualifications. We're embracing learning opportunities, and we have a professional commitment to improve.
All right, a bit of the overview, and this is right out of the contractual PD guidelines. That can be found on the Sunrise Teachers Association website. If you just type in sunriseteachers.ca, it'll redirect you to sunriseteachers.weebly.com. Click on professional development, and you can read everything that our members get to read. The document is called guidelines. So the overview, again, I don't have to read it, but this a contractual PD was achieved as a result of negotiations between the association and the board back in 2011-12. So and it pretty much predates everybody, I guess, except for a couple. The contractual PD fund is intended to stimulate professional growth and provide financial assistance to as many teachers as possible. All teachers, regardless of their FTE, full-time equivalent, qualify for access to funding, with the exception of teachers on leave. Some of the funding goes to, or actually the assistance is meant to fund attendance at seminars, workshops, webinars, professional programs, collaborative opportunities, teacher-initiated. As long as there's value in the professional development or in the, if there's value in professional development that teachers can take back to the class, we respect that, and I think that those opportunities are of great relevance to teachers and to the students that they teach.
I just want to make clear too, there are a lot of different ways that professional development happens in Sunrise. We have program leaders, we have PD days, we have all kinds of things happening in our schools, school-initiated professional development, even just amongst our staff. But this particular way that we have professional development is chosen by the teachers to go on what the teacher chooses as having their most immediate need or what they feel is their independent choice of professional development.
And as you can read, funding is allocated on a first-come basis, and currently the funding allocation, the annual allocation is $120,000 and has been frozen due to the Bill 28, the sustainability and our inability to renegotiate our contract. The criteria for funding, the funding has to, one of the following criteria has to be met in order for the applicant to receive funding. So divisional goals, school goals, teacher professional learning plan, PLP, and or the actual assignment of the teacher. The oversight, there's 2 layers of oversight through the application process. The teacher must have their application signed off by their school principal or designated school principal or vice principal. Anybody that works in the education centers, so that would include clinicians and program leaders, and principals require the signature of the superintendent to sign off on their application. The second piece of oversight is that the committee reviews the process prior to approval, or reviews the application prior to approval. We have a PD committee in place consisting of the president of the association. We have the professional development chair, that's Leanne, and our guidelines allow for up to 3 members at large. Currently, we have 2 additional members at large, and I'd like to say that other than the president, who is on full-time release, all of the other people are volunteers, and when the PD applications are coming in, this is what these girls do at nighttime. See approvals coming in or conversations going on at 11:30, 12 o'clock at night, like literally. The
You better get no, it's not. And there are certain, like, it's like hills and valleys of different PD rushes of when applications come in September is usually obviously a very busy one, and surprisingly June is actually a busy one because teachers are preparing for the upcoming school year. So those are 2 actually really busy times.
I guess we have 50 now? Yeah. We're right at about 50 applications right now. So they are flowing in. Duties and responsibilities, you can read that for yourself. The committee basically is there to provide the assurance that any of our obligations are adhered to, either the contractual obligations or the obligations in the guidelines. Categories. Apparently the board wanted to know about categories, so here they are. We have in-province, 2 categories of in-province PD opportunities. One where a substitute is required, one where, where no substitute is required, the other where a substitute is required. You can see the funding amounts differ roughly, or the spirit of those numbers would be that where a substitute is not required, or the difference between those two figures would roughly be the cost of a sub for the day. Actually, the cost for a sub for the day is $186. That's depending on the sub that you get, about $186 taxes all in. University courses are funded at a flat rate of $625, and if anyone has recently taken a university course, now these are last year's figures. University courses now with fees, a 3 credit hour course, we see applications coming in where they're paying like $744 for a 3 credit hour course. 800. Yeah. Right. The out of province PDs where no subs are required, $1,650. Where substitute are required, we like to factor in a couple of days of sub costs for the applicant, and so it would be $2,000. And so applications by the numbers, last year we had 172 applications with 9 cancellations, so net 162 processed applications. By category, local applications, 142, international, or pardon me, out of province, national, that's in Canada, applications 6, and then 14 international applications, for a total of 162 processed. I've got some examples of PDs. There's too many words to read, but you can appreciate, I mean, we couldn't put everything down, but strategies these are all meant to benefit students. They're totally applicable to the climate, the educational climate that the teachers are facing, teachers in the trenches are facing today. So strategies for educating youth, reading strategies, EduCom, guided mindful practices, and on and on and on. Out of province, Canada PDs, reading for the love of it, 2 applicants or 2 attendees, Phys Ed National Conference, Languages Without Borders. All the brackets are the number of attendees for those conferences. Out of province international, the Midwest International Band Clinic, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, that was a national conference, limited resource teacher training, educational leadership, and on. Are you cut? Are we done? Make it quick. Trends. There's the trends. There's the numbers. And I will provide a copy of this. Challenges. We are experiencing challenges of applicants that may not have attended a PD, and we have already allocated money, committed money to their application. We ran out of money, theoretically, on paper last year, mid-February, early March, and had to actually do some emailing and phone calling to find out, and some forensic work to find out who actually went and who didn't go. And the second challenge is reconciling the expense claims due to the absence of sub-costs that are listed per application. There's no record that I can access that says application 19-020 had a sub. Will cost a sub in if they request a sub, but there's no way to reconcile whether or not that sub was ever used. And that is a challenge, and Scott and I have been talking about that. And then premature PD fund depletion. It's $120,000, and that $120 does not go very far with the cost of professional development these days. That's the reality. I appreciate your time. We'll take any questions you might have. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Leanne. Trustee Ainsley?
Thanks, Cole. You said that the budget's around $120,000. and it's a first come, first serve. Do you
Yes.
set a limit on how much each person can spend? So like say, Paul wanted to do 10 courses and used 100,000 and yeah, bought a load of books. But no, joking aside, do you set a limit?
Yes, in the guidelines, it's very clear there is a limit set. So last year, the limit for an in-province PD was at 625. If you needed a sub, it was a bit more. Out of province was set at its rate. So let's say I don't need a sub, maybe a clinician would be a good example, and some of the PD they go to might be a little less expensive, right in Winnipeg. They could go to 3 or 4 in the year, whereas maybe a classroom teacher, they need a sub. That's why we have it a little bit staggered and different, but there's limits, right? There's limits on what you can access. And the out-of-town limit, I just want to just say, that when I look at people, when they send in their forms, it costs a lot more than what they are reimbursed for. If you're going into the States or somewhere else for an out-of-town PD, you're going to be spending, unless you're sharing a room or something, or bunking with your auntie or something, you're coming out of pocket for a lot of those expenses in addition to what the PD fund can provide you. But, you know, we do. But yes, there's limits to what you can access, so that limits how many you can go to.
Okay, thank you.
Don?
You have to trust us. Leanne might be able to add something to this.
Okay. I'm also obviously, I'm very interested in PD and I'm a strong advocate for it. But I can't imagine anybody taking the time to go to a PD, writing up sub-plans so that I can go, and not going because it's going to be valuable for something I'm going to do in my classroom. Rarely, and it does happen occasionally, but rarely do I ever get feedback from a teacher saying, oh, that was such a waste of my time. It might happen occasionally, like, you know, how do you know when you're looking at a website or whatever saying, oh, this PD offers this, I assume that's what they're going to offer. Yeah, it might happen the odd time, but based out of these, you know, numerous people that are going, the overwhelming majority come back saying, yeah, this was a good PD. They also say on their application form that they're going to do something with this information. Often, the most common one that we read, I'm going to share this with my peers, either at our collaboration time or in group sessions or whatever they have going on in their school, because school
sure that the things that we're spending money on in the division are making an impact on the education of our students, and goes back to even the quotes that you said. So I guess my question is I still really haven't got that answer, is if it's measurable. I mean, we have data that's telling us it is, but how do I know in my schools in Sunrise that PD that our staff are going to, and we're using that whole budget by February, you said, is benefiting each and every student in those classrooms? And so I guess my next question is just, is there financial benefits for staff who take PD with respect to their salary and potential increases when they come back and have furthered their education?
There can be. There are many staff that, now you're talking about the university courses that they're taking, and they can advance their classification after 30 credit hours. It takes an awful long time to do that. They're taking, these are teachers that might be jumping from the classroom into, say, a resource position potentially. And it is, I was going to say, a condition of employment to be in a resource position that you're working towards, and I've seen on the postings, must be working towards that classification or that qualification. So the short answer to your question is yes, they can benefit financially. It's a long process, and I would go so far as to say that the division is not paying 100% of the freight.
One thing, just saying, like, I have seen university courses coming in well over $800 in recent time, my own daughter included. But I want to say really clearly, 30 credit hours takes a long time to achieve when you're working full-time for most of these people. And all that time that's happening, that teacher's getting more and more education as that's happening, and they're becoming better teachers in that process. So are we benefiting as a division? Absolutely. Yeah. Are they, as that teacher, probably going to get a financial reward at the end of that all? Yeah, they're going to go up in that salary grid, right? They're going up. But as a division, we are benefiting. We're getting better teachers out of that. So.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, I guess just in closing then, and I promise I'm done after this, is you can understand now, though, from my perspective, and having to be accountable to taxpayers, that when I want to see measurables and when I want to see that the things that they're taking in PD are benefiting their children, because there's ultimately not only the PD piece, there's the beneficial piece to salary increases and those types of things. And absolutely, like I said, I'm a very strong advocate of continuous development and continuous learning. I think we all learn, we all are going to take something from something all the time. But I just want to make sure that we're doing what's best for our students in our schools.
Anyone else? Trustee Barry?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thanks for the presentation, Leanne and Cole. It was very, very interesting. And as a new trustee it's good to hear that there's criteria for the allocation of funds, and education is a very important part. I'm a very proponent of that for our teachers and all the staff. But I guess my question would be, you said 162. Is that a kind of average? Are we trending more than the last 5 years or whatever? Or going to see more in the...
We can, my gut is that the number of applications is, our ability to fund applications is decreasing because of the rise in the cost of processing those applications. I think I'm kind of remembering 200-ish, 180, something like that. There were years that we actually left money on the table, but we're seeing more of a trend to fund depletion simply because of the economics and the strength of the dollar.
Diane?
Thank you very much. Like your website, lots of transparency on there, and so it's the first time I've seen a presentation like this to the board, so thank you very much. Just a couple of questions. Do you send teams? Like, is there any success in sending teams? That's one question. Second question is the areas of interest. Is there more focus at different grade levels that you see a more interest at? And the third question is there any frustration out there saying, we would love to have PD here and we just can't find it? Like, is there a frustration that you can't find what you're looking for?
So yes, we do have limits on our teams, though. It's in the criteria, but because we feel that after a number of teachers have gone from the same building, that they should be coming back and sharing that as opposed to sending the whole school out. There's also, you need to limit it because there's a substitute issue, right? You don't want to have a school that's loaded with subs on one given day, just even though there is a great PD available. So we do have some limits in our criteria, and it depends on the size of the school, actually. Second one, sorry, it's gone. Yeah, we often find that there are certain areas of teachers that access more PD than others, and it comes often down to what's available. You can imagine how rare it would be to find a chemistry PD or a biology at the high school level, and they crave it, they ask, they look for it, but it's not easily available. So that is more difficult. The clinicians, depending on what their area is, they may be able to access a lot more locally. Definitely we see that as a trend. And early years teachers tend to access a lot of math and literacy. Yeah. And you had a third one, right? Oh yeah, this is my favorite thing of PD. One of the options that's available is for a group of teachers to collaborate. We could collaborate with teachers from different schools, or we could collaborate with a group from our own school. And what it is the teachers on their own time, they're going to make up a plan for what they want to collaborate on. I can give you an example. 2 years ago, I guess it was, my building, we decided we were going to do an inquiry project on bees, and we're early years teachers, so we get into this really big time, right? So we decided to do an inquiry project on bees, and there were 4 or 5 of us, I can't remember exactly how many, all at the same grade level. We made a proposal to the PD committee. We matched the criteria, it's matching our curriculum outcomes in our classroom, and we sat for a day and we planned this, outcomes based, but we integrated all of our subject areas. We had a really great planning day. And the idea is when you start bouncing off of other teachers in the same room, like it grew into a really, really good unit, something that we were all very, very proud of, and it was good. Like, it was really good stuff, as opposed to, one teacher sitting down and planning a unit themselves. To have that opportunity to collaborate, you can't put a price on it. It's just fantastic. So.
Thanks, Leanne. Don?
You alluded to that you left money on the table. You don't have the ability to carry over from year to year?
No. We'd like it to have that ability.
Why not? Is that according to the contract?
No, actually, we never know if there's money left on the table until past the deadline for applying for funding carryover, or if that's the correct nomenclature.
Anyone else?
Pretty much.
Can I maybe jump in and respond to you, Jarrett? I think you're looking for the return on investment for professional development. That's what it sounds like to me, which is a business term. It has been researched over and over, and there is no direct correlation saying that if I go do this, this is going to happen. But I think I want to link back to what Jackie said in her presentation about class profiles and grade level profiles in schools, because I think we're getting tighter into what we're actually looking at.
So when we create a class profile for our students, we're also using it to then have a conversation with grade level teachers and classroom teachers to say, what's the gap analysis here in my classroom? And so if I have, and she listed the categories of literacy and numeracy, which are key, along with some other areas. If I have a gap in numeracy, and if I can narrow that even more into, I know that there's an issue with number sense for this class of grade 3 children, then I'm going to seek out some professional learning because clearly the strategies I'm using aren't working. So we're trying to tighten that so that we actually can measure impact in ways that I think you're looking for. We are on that journey, and I think we're on it. I think next time I present, can I give a teaser? I'm going to. Okay, come on, Paul.
You're teasing me, go ahead.
We have talked in the past about the MRLC, Manitoba Rural Learning Consortium Numeracy Project. So I have 4 years of data to share with you about the gains that we've made in grade 6 and grade 9 mathematics across our division in the different areas by outcome. Stay tuned.
Thanks, Leanne Peters. Anyone else? So thank you for going, Cole and Leanne, for doing this. You're going to see that we're going to be asking these questions all throughout. And the questions are, when you said we need to be more effective, we're going to be asking you, are you? And I don't think that you're going to collect one piece of data to go ahead and tell us that whether you are or not. And we're going to be asking, how do you know? Because we're asking Leanne and we're asking Jackie and we're asking Kathy those kind of questions. If you want to do something, go ahead and do it. We'll find resources for you. But at the same time, how do you know what you're doing is working? When Jared was asking the question about, is it improving student learning, we're going to continue coming back. Is it improving student learning? As a teacher, you're evaluating what you're doing all the time to see about, whether you do the same thing over again or do you tweak it or those kind of things. We're asking those questions from now on and continually. You want to do something, how do we know it's working? And I think then you're collecting as much evidence as possible, and we want to see that evidence as to see about how things are going. So, Leanne, the example of what you've done with MRLC and the cohorts in math. Break to stretch or to go and stretch. And let's come back in 3-4 minutes, 5 minutes. Thank you. If we want you to roll you somewhere, we'll